Part 1. Extension, Saint-Véran, Provence, night, 1958. Wind scrapes against the pine hills like dull knives. The village of Saint-Véran sleeps under a cold crescent moon, its stone houses shuttered, their chimneys coughing out wisps of thin smoke. Crickets are silent tonight. Only the church bell swings slightly in the wind, groaning as though in warning. At the far end of the cobblestone road, at the edge of the ravine, stands a building no one in town speaks of after dark, l'auberge du Diable Rouge. Once painted red, the color has long since drained away, leaving a sickly shade of rust. Moss clings to the walls like old blood. Its wooden sign, creaking, bears the faint carving of a horned devil lifting a chalice. Ent. L'auberge du Diable Rouge, main room, night. A single oil lamp flickers. Shadows crawl across the warped beams of the ceiling. A man staggers through the front door, Etienne Morel, 40s, a miner from the nearby shaft, his clothes powdered with coal, his face flushed with drink. He throws his coat across a chair and calls out to no one. Etienne. Slurring. Wine, or hellfire, I'll drink either tonight. The room answers only with a hollow creak. Behind the counter, empty bottles line up like witnesses. Dust dances in the lamplight. Etienne finds a half-filled bottle left behind and pours himself a glass. The first swallow burns, but he smiles. Etienne. To himself. They say the devil keeps this place. He must have gone to bed early. He laughs at his own joke, but the laugh dies in his throat. A faint sound rises above him. Creak, 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 the groan of old wood, measured like footsteps. He looks up toward the wooden staircase leading to the upper floor. The air above is heavy, the shadows thicker. Etienne. Calling out. Anyone there? No reply. The only movement is the curtain near the stairs, trembling as if something had brushed past it. He squints, wipes sweat from his brow though the air is cold, and mutters. Etienne. Bloody rats. He takes another drink. Then, bottle in hand, he climbs the stairs, each step whining under his boots. Ent. Upstairs landing, continuous. The corridor stretches narrow, the walls lined with faded portraits, men and women from another century, their eyes repainted black. At the end of the hallway stands a wooden door, half open, leading to the small lavatory. A faint dripping sound echoes inside. Etienne pushes the door open. Inside, a cracked mirror, a rust-stained sink, a single candle melted into a pool of wax. The dripping stops. His reflection flickers, and for a second, it smiles though he does not. He freezes. The mirror trembles, like glass under strain. Etienne. Hoarse whisper. Who's there? From behind him, the door slams shut. Darkness. He drops the bottle, it shatters. He fumbles for the candle, hands shaking. The flame flickers to life, revealing a child's handprint, smeared in dried brown, on the wall beside him. He staggers back, knocking against the door. And then, a whisper, right at his ear. Child's voice, OS. Tu veux jouer avec moi? Do you want to play with me? He spins around, in nothing there. But his breath fogs in the air, white and trembling. Then, from the mirror, a reflection behind him, a small girl in a torn white dress, her head tilted to one side, neck bruised deep purple. Her eyes are milk white. Etienne turns, choking on a scream, the room is empty. The candle flickers violently, then dies. The last sound he hears before the darkness takes him, wood creaking behind him, slow and deliberate. Then, a cold, wet hand grips the back of his collar and pushes. Ent. Main room, same. The silence is broken by a dull, bone-cracking thud. Etienne's body hits the edge of the old oak table below, his head splitting open like ripe fruit. Blood spills in a wide arc across the floorboards, glistening black in the lamplight. For a long time, there is nothing but the whisper of wind through the broken window. Then, faint laughter. A child's laughter. It echoes softly, from upstairs. fade out. 3 months later. Extension, Saint-Véran, day. Winter light bleeds over the hills. Snow dusts the ground, but the air smells of iron and ash. A military truck crawls up the hill road. The man at the wheel, Victor Lemaire, mid-30s, is lean, sun-scorched, with the cold eyes of someone who's killed before and buried the memory deep. He parks outside l'auberge du Diable Rouge. Beside him sits Camille Valois, late 20s, cigarette between her lips, crimson scarf knotted tight, her beauty sharp as a blade. Camille. Dryly. So this is it, the devil's in. You sure know how to pick real estate, mon capitaine. Victor. Checking the deed. Price was half what it should be. I like a bargain. Camille. You like ghosts, more like. He glances at her, smiles faintly. Victor. Ghosts don't scare me, ma belle. The living do. They step out. The air is still. The front door moans open with a sound like something exhaling. Dust swirls in the sunlight that slants through broken shutters. Ent. L'auberge du Diable Rouge, day. They walk through the empty dining room. Chairs overturned. The floorboards still stained dark where Etienne's blood once spread. Victor sets his bag down. Victor. Needs work, yes, but the bones are good. Camille. The bones, yes. Plenty of those in the walls, I imagine. He ignores the jab, moving toward the counter. He opens the icebox, metal hinges squealing. Inside, a doll's head stares back at him, porcelain cracked, its eyes replaced with shirt buttons, its mouth stuffed with coarse salt. Camille gasps. Camille. What kind of sick joke? Victor slams the lid shut, jaw tightening. Victor. Locals. Probably trying to keep us away. Camille. Then they've done a good job. She lights another cigarette, her hand trembling slightly. Smoke curls toward the ceiling. At that moment, a faint tapping sound comes from the staircase. They both freeze. Tap. 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 Victor moves closer, pulling his revolver from his coat. He peers up, only the shadow of the stair rail twisting upward like a spine. The sound stops. Then, softly, a small handprint appears on the banister, dark red, still wet. Camille drops her cigarette, crushing it under her heel. Camille. Mon Dieu. Victor. It's nothing. Old stains. Camille. They weren't there a moment ago. Before he can answer, the lamp on the counter flickers, then flares bright, and the radio on the shelf crackles to life by itself. A French news voice emerges through static. Radio, VO. Body of local minority and Morel discovered alive after 3 months in coma, found drawing images of a little girl with a rope around her neck. The radio dies. Silence. Camille stares at Victor, eyes wide. Camille. He's still alive? Victor. Grim. For now. He holsters his gun, turns toward the stairs again. Victor. Let's get this place cleaned up. Tonight we reopen. Camille. Tonight? You're mad. Victor. Coldly. The only way to break a curse is to face it. The light bulb above them bursts, glass raining down. Extension, l'auberge, night. Hours later. The inn glows faintly through the windows, candles lit inside. From the distance, it almost looks alive again. Camille stands outside, smoking, watching the darkness between the trees. A chill moves through her, as if someone breathed against her neck. She turns, no one there. Then, at the upstairs window, for just a moment, a child's face, pale and still, watching her. She drops the cigarette. Camille. Whispers. Leah. Ent. L'auberge, same. Inside, Victor scrubs the bar counter. The scratches on the wood seem to form letters, old and carved deep, like fingernail marks. Illinois Reviant. He frowns, runs his hand over it, the grooves are fresh. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaks. He straightens, eyes narrowing. Victor. Quietly. Welcome home, then. The wind outside rises, whistling through the chimney. The candle flame bends low. And from deep within the walls, a faint echo begins, tap, 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 the sound of a cleaver hitting wood. Night falls heavy over Saint-Véran. The hills breathe fog that rolls down toward the inn like pale smoke. Somewhere, a fox screams, sharp, human-like, then silence again. The village below has long since gone dark. Inside l'auberge du Diable Rouge, candlelight trembles against the stone walls, throwing monstrous shapes that seem to move on their own. Camille Valois works behind the counter, cleaning glasses that no one will drink from. The smell of vinegar and damp wood clings to her fingers. Every creak of the floor makes her flinch. Victor Lemaire sits alone by the hearth, drinking brandy from a chipped glass, the fire's reflection dancing in his eyes. The flames seem too bright for so little wood. Camille. Quietly. It shouldn't burn like that. Victor. Fire burns where there's air. That's all. Camille. Smiles thinly. Or where there's souls. He looks up at her. The crackle of the fire is the only reply. A cold gust snakes down the chimney. The fire gutters low, then bursts high again, as if exhaling. Something inside the flames shifts, a brief shape, small, human, gone before it's real. Camille drops the glass she's holding. It shatters on the counter. Camille. Breathing fast. Did you see that? Victor. I saw a frightened woman, that's all. He stands, wiping his hands on his trousers. But his face betrays him, pale beneath the soldier's calm. Later. The wind howls outside. The Olden groans as if under invisible weight. Camille and the 3 surviving staff, 2 men and 1 woman hired from the next village, sit around the dining table, bottles half empty. Camille's voice shakes slightly when she speaks. Camille. There's something here. I've felt it since morning. I dreamt of a child, her mouth full of ash. The young kitchen girl, Lucienne, crosses herself. Lucienne. The villagers warned me. They said a man killed children here. In the Revolution days. A butcher. Camille. Nods. Gaspard le Boucher. They say he boiled their bones to make soap. Victor slams his palm on the table, making everyone jump. Victor. Enough. I don't want that filth repeated in my house. Camille. Your house? This place belonged to the devil before you were born. He looks at her. For a heartbeat, something dark flashes in his eyes, the soldier again, the one who burned villages in Algeria. But she doesn't flinch. Camille. Softly. You can't shoot ghosts, Victor. The lamp flickers. The flame dances sideways, like it's being blown from inside the glass. Victor exhales through his nose, stands abruptly. Victor. If you're so certain there's something here, prove it. Camille. How? Victor. Call it out. Camille's lips part slightly, as if he'd suggested a sin. Lucienne. You mean, a séance? Victor. I mean a test. You want to live here, you face what lives here with you. He pours brandy into 4 glasses, sets one before each of them, like communion. Victor. Drink. To courage. They obey, though Lucienne's hand trembles so much she spills half of hers. Midnight. The candles are lit again, 13 of them, arranged in a rough circle on the floor. Camille's idea. The inn smells of wax and iron. On the table lies a wooden cutting board, smooth and stained from years of use. On it, Camille has painted letters in red, A to Z, the numbers 0 to 9, and the words yes, no, goodbye. But the paint is not paint. Lucien watches in horror as Camille dips her finger into a porcelain bowl filled with dark red fluid. Lucien. Is that? Camille. Quietly. Mine. The men avert their eyes as she traces the last letters, her finger glistening. Victor. Jesus Christ, Camille. Camille. Smirks. He won't help you here. They place a crystal glass upside down in the center. Victor. Dryly. All right, Madam Medium. What now? Camille. We ask. The first question comes as a whisper. Camille. Is anyone here with us? The candles shudder. The flame bends toward the door. Nothing. Then, clink. The glass trembles. Moves slightly toward the letter O, then U, then I. Lucien. O-U-I. The glass stops. Victor chuckles, though there's no mirth in it. Victor. You pushed it. Camille. I didn't. Victor. Someone did. Camille. Ask it yourself. He hesitates, but only a second. Victor. Who are you? The glass remains still. Then moves, slow at first, then faster, scraping faintly on the wood. I-L-R-E-V-I-E-N-T. Lucien. Whispers. Illinois Revient. Camille. He returns. A cold wind sweeps through the room. One candle extinguishes, then another, and another, until only the one nearest Camille still burns. Its flame stretches sideways, drawn toward her wrist. The smell of burnt hair fills the air. Camille. Grimacing. Something's touching me. The glass jerks, skidding across the letters. The sound rises, screeching, like nails on metal. The letters blur together. Then it stops, pointing squarely at B-R-U-L-E-R. Lucien. Choking out. Brûler, to burn. The fire in the hearth explodes upward, roaring white-hot. Sparks rain across the floor. The two men leap back. Victor grabs a bucket, hurls water, but the water ignites, blooming into vapor before it hits the flames. From beneath the table comes a sudden dragging sound, heavy and wet. Lucien screams, her chair jerks backward, pulled by something unseen. She tumbles, vanishing halfway under the table. Her legs thrash, heels kicking the floor. Her cries cut off with a wet snap. The others freeze. The table lifts slightly, as if something underneath is pushing upward. Blood seeps out, thin at first, then thick, running between the floorboards. Camille. Shaking. Victor, you do something. Victor lunges forward, grabs the table edge, flips it aside. Lucien's body lies twisted, her throat marked with 3 deep scratches, long and even, carved straight to bone. The glass still rests on her chest, trembling, pointing at the word goodbye. Moments later. The inn is chaos. Smoke, blood, and the metallic stench of terror. Camille sobs quietly in the corner, her face streaked red where she'd wiped her hand across her mouth. Victor stands by the fireplace, staring at the flames. They've calmed now, small and steady, as though nothing happened. Victor. Quietly. We stop this. We bury her tomorrow and we don't speak of it again. Camille. You think silence will save you? Victor. It saved me before. Camille. In war, maybe. Not here. She walks slowly toward him. Her reflection wavers in the dark window behind him, and for a brief instant, there's another face there. A child's face, pale and smiling. Camille gasps. Camille. There. But when she points, it's gone. Victor grabs her wrist. Victor. Low. Enough. His grip leaves a red mark. She stares at it, his hand, her blood. Camille. Whispers. He likes fire. You feel it too, don't you? He releases her, steps back. His voice hardens. Victor. Go to your room. Bolt the door. I'll watch the night. Camille. And if he comes for you? Victor. Then maybe he'll find I'm not afraid of burning. Later. The inn sleeps uneasily. Wind rattles the shutters. Victor sits alone at the bar, revolver beside his glass. The radio crackles again. Radio, VO. Witnesses report strange lights above Saint-Véran. Authorities suspect gas leaks from old mines. He switches it off. A faint creaking comes from the ceiling above, steady, rhythmic. Like someone walking, or swinging. He glances up, frowning. Then, from the shadows near the stairs, a girl's whisper, distant, playful. Leah, OS. Illinois va vous brûler. He will burn you. The lamp goes out. Only the dying fire remains, and in its glow, on the far wall, the flicker of a child's silhouette, hanging by the neck, slowly turning. Victor doesn't breathe. The rope creaks once. And the fire goes black. Morning seeps in like a bruise. The sky above Saint-Véran is a dull violet, bruised by the smoke that never seems to leave the valley. The inn's roof breathes that same smoke through its cracked tiles, faint, bitter, unholy. Camille stands at the window, eyes hollow from a night without sleep. She hasn't spoken to Victor since dawn. He buried Lucien behind the inn before sunrise, under a mound of frozen soil. No prayer. No cross. Only the sound of the shovel cutting through frost. Now, the silence in the inn feels swollen, almost alive. Every wall seems to hold its breath. The clock strikes 10, one long metallic clang that vibrates through the wood like a dying heart. A knock breaks the stillness. 3 times. Firm. Precise. Camille flinches. Victor opens the door. A woman stands there, wrapped in a long grey coat that looks older than the century. Madame Séverine, 42, tall, severe, hair braided tight, eyes the color of ash. She carries no luggage, only a small black satchel bound in leather and salt-stained thread. Séverine. Monsieur le Maire. Victor. You've come far. Séverine. I was called. She steps inside without waiting for permission. The air around her changes, colder, heavier. The flames in the hearth shrink, as though bowing. Camille watches from the staircase. Camille. Softly. Who are you? Séverine. Someone who listens to the dead when they can no longer whisper. She removes her gloves, fingers pale and scarred, the kind of scars left by rope and fire. Victor shuts the door. Victor. The village priest sent you? Séverine. Dryly. The priest in this village hasn't dared say the name of this inn in 20 years. No, your dead miner sent me. The words freeze him. Victor. Etienne Morel? Séverine. He dreams still. He draws still. And last night, he drew me. She places her satchel on the table and opens it. Inside, an old silver crucifix, blackened by soot, 3 vials of thick red liquid, and a cracked photograph of a little girl, maybe 8 years old, standing barefoot in the snow. Her throat bears a faint bruise, like a necklace of shadows. Camille. Leah. Séverine nods. Séverine. You've seen her. Camille. She's been here. In the mirror. In the fire. Séverine. Then she's not free. And if she's not free, he is not gone. Victor. He? Séverine. Gaspard le Boucher. The name hangs in the air like a curse. The walls seem to creak in answer. Afternoon. Séverine walks through the inn slowly, each step deliberate, her eyes half closed. She touches the walls, the banister, the stone hearth, as though listening with her fingertips. Camille follows her like a shadow. Camille. You said the dead called you. How? Séverine. Through the cracks in my mind. Through dreams that aren't mine. Camille. And you believe the girl wants something? Séverine. The dead always want something. Justice, revenge, or a mouth to speak through. They stop before the staircase, the one where Etienne fell. The steps groan softly, though no one moves. Séverine. Murmurs. Blood remembers where it fell. She kneels, brushing her hand over the lowest stair. When she lifts it, her palm is wet, with fresh blood. Camille gasps. Camille. Mon Dieu. Séverine. No. Not him. Something else answers here. Her pupils widen, swallowing the grey. A thin line of blood trickles from her ear. Séverine. Hissing. He's beneath. In the earth. In the walls. Her body trembles. She grips the banister, voice breaking. Séverine. Illinois la coupe encore. He's cutting her again. Camille grabs her shoulders, shaking her. Camille. Séverine. What do you see? Séverine. Fire. Flesh. The girl's bones in the oven. His hands, red, he sings while he does it. A scream cuts through her words, sharp as glass, but it comes from nowhere. The inn itself seems to scream. The candles blow out all at once. Darkness. Camille fumbles for a match. It strikes, spilling yellow light. Séverine stands upright now, her expression distant, eyes rolled white. Behind her, the shadows on the wall move on their own. They stretch long, bending around the shape of a man, tall, broad, carrying something heavy. The match burns out. In the momentary dark, Séverine's voice is not her own. Séverine, possessed. Regarde, petite fille, Illinois fate bow downs le feu. Look, little girl, it's beautiful in the fire. Camille backs away, crosses herself. Camille. Victor. Victor bursts into the room, revolver drawn. He sees Séverine trembling in the corner, hair wild, eyes rolled back. Victor. What the hell? Camille. She saw him. Gaspard, she. Séverine's hand shoots out, pointing toward the wall behind the hearth. Séverine. There. He hid her there. Victor turns, scanning the soot-stained bricks. Victor. There's nothing but stone. Séverine. Break it. Her voice is iron. He hesitates, then grabs a poker from the fire and smashes it into the brick. Dust and old mortar rain down. He hits again, clang, crack, clang, until the wall begins to give. The smell that pours out is ancient and foul, rot, smoke, and sweet decay. He pries one brick free. Behind it, darkness. He reaches in, his fingers brush fabric. He pulls, and the object that falls out hits the floor with a dull thud. It's a small shoe. Burnt black. Camille stifles a sob. Séverine begins to laugh, soft, almost kind, then louder, until it becomes a ragged cackle. Séverine. Crying, laughing. You feel it now, don't you? He's in the ashes. In every spark. Victor throws the shoe aside, grabs her by the shoulders. Victor. What do you mean, he's here? He's dead. Séverine. Smiling faintly. So is she. Yet she still knocks on your walls. She collapses, unconscious. Evening. Rain begins to fall outside, thick, heavy drops that hiss against the windows. Camille sits by Séverine's bed upstairs, pressing a damp cloth to her forehead. The woman's skin burns with fever. Her voice, when it comes, is low but lucid. Séverine. He took her because she saw what he was. He thought fire would erase it. But fire remembers. Camille. Why her? Why Leah? Séverine. Because she was innocent. And innocence burns slowest. Downstairs, Victor keeps watch by the hearth. The opened wall gapes like a wound, black and wet. The air smells of rust and child's perfume. Every now and then, the fire flares, blue, not orange. He pours another drink, his hand shaking for the first time. The revolver lies beside him, useless. He looks at the cracked photograph Séverine left on the table. Leah's pale face seems to shimmer in the firelight, and for a moment, he swears her eyes blink. Victor. Whispers. What do you want from us? No answer. Then a faint voice, behind him, near the stairs, a child's whisper, muffled, sad. Leah, OS. Illinois ma coupe en morceaux. He spins around. Nothing. The window shudders in its frame. Rain lashes harder. Victor backs away from the hearth, and in the flames, a shape begins to form, broad shoulders, a butcher's apron, glowing white-hot, face a blur of melted flesh. A hand, red and dripping, presses against the inside of the fire grate. Then, with a hiss, the flames go out. Smoke fills the room. When it clears, only the mark remains, a handprint burned into the stone, 5 blackened fingers spread wide. Upstairs, Séverine bolts upright, eyes wide. Séverine. Screaming. He's awake. The lamps blow out. The hole in shudders once, deep and low, like a beast taking its first breath in centuries. Camille runs to the window. Lightning flashes, and in that brief, electric light, she sees Leah standing in the garden below, dress torn, face calm, staring up at her. Around the child, the grass is on fire. Camille screams. By the time Victor bursts in, there's no one outside, only scorched earth, shaped like small bare feet. Night again. The inn is still. The rain has stopped. Séverine lies awake, eyes open, whispering a prayer in a language older than Latin. Camille watches her, too afraid to blink. Victor stands by the doorway, pale with exhaustion. Victor. What happens now? Séverine. Quietly. Now, he will start to feed. Camille. On what? Séverine. On fear. On guilt. On the living who think they've escaped. Victor. And when is done? Séverine closes her eyes. Séverine. Then the walls will bleed. A sound rises from deep below, not the wind this time. A heartbeat, slow and steady, pulsing through the stone. The candles flicker. Somewhere under the floor, a child begins to hum. A lullaby. Soft. Broken. Endless. Part 2. The night did not end. It only folded in on itself, like a wound refusing to close. Outside, the Mistral wind clawed at the shutters of l'auberge du Diable Rouge, howling through the pine trees that crept up the hill like black flames. Inside, the fire had gone out, yet the room breathed with heat, a suffocating warmth, thick and rancid, as if someone had opened an oven door from the other side of the grave. Victor Lemaire stood behind the counter, staring at the floorboards. A thin line of wine, no, not wine, but something darker, snaked out from under the kitchen door, curling toward his boots like a crimson vine. Camille, he whispered, did you spill the syrah? Camille Valois didn't answer. She stood near the stairway, cigarette trembling between her fingers, eyes fixed on the ceiling above. The wood moaned with weight that shouldn't be there. Séverine sat at a table near the center of the room, one hand over her temple, the other tracing invisible symbols on the wet wood. Her eyes were unfocused, her lips murmuring Latin that had been forgotten by the living. Victor's voice cracked through the silence. "Madam, what are you seeing?" She didn't look up. A man. Burned. Tall. His in the walls. The electric light flickered, and for one instant, a heartbeat, no more, Victor saw the silhouette on the far wall, a massive figure, shoulders broad as a doorway, face seamed with burns, holding something long and metallic. The light steadied. The shadow was gone. But the knife remained, a butcher's cleaver, lying in the middle of the floor, gleaming wetly in the half-light. Camille gasped. "That's from the kitchen. I cleaned it hours ago." Victor bent to pick it up. The handle was still warm. And as his fingers closed around it, the sound began, low, guttural, animal. A chuckle that rolled from the stone foundations beneath them. Séverine's head snapped up, eyes wide with terror. "Put it down. Illinois la Trouve. He's found his blade again." Victor dropped the cleaver with a clang. It slid across the floor and came to rest at the foot of the stairs, the same stairs that Ian Morel had fallen from, 3 months earlier. From above came a single thump. Then another. Then the sound of something dragging, slow, and deliberate. Camille whispered, "Leah?" A child's laughter trickled down from the darkness. Sweet. Distant. Wrong. The bulb above the staircase shattered. For a moment, the inn was plunged into silence and darkness. Then the air shifted, not like a breeze, but like breath on the back of the neck. Séverine stood, shaking. Her grey eyes were like coins reflecting firelight. "He's here." La Boucher walks again. She took a step toward the stairs, fingers clutching a small vial from her coat, holy water stolen from a ruined chapel outside Avignon. She sprinkled it onto the steps, muttering in a cracked whisper. "Per sanguinem Christi, ligae te." The droplets hissed as they touched the wood. Smoke rose, dark, oily, smelling of burnt meat. A voice answered from the shadows above. Deep. Mocking. Ligae moi? Tu plaisantes, ma belle. I was born in this fire. Camille screamed. From the top of the stairs, something moved, not a man, not entirely. The shape was swollen, its flesh blistered and blackened, face half gone, teeth gleaming beneath cracked lips. His eyes were hollow sockets that leaked smoke instead of tears. Gaspard Le Boucher stepped forward, dragging his cleaver against the wall, leaving a trail of red-hot scorch marks. Séverine held her ground, trembling. "In the name of the Blessed Virgin, return to your pit." The entity laughed. "You think she comes here? You think she listens? This house is mine, sorcière. It was built on my hands, and my knives." He raised the cleaver and slammed it into the banister. Splinters exploded across the room. Victor shouted, grabbing a bottle of cognac and hurling it at the figure. It struck Gaspard's shoulder, but instead of breaking, the glass melted, running down his arm like molten amber. The butcher stepped down another stair. Then another. Each footfall left a black imprint, burned into the wood. Camille backed against the bar, shaking. "Madam, stop him! Please!" Séverine's voice was a dry whisper. "I can't." Her rosary broke in her hand. The beads scattered across the floor like drops of blood. Gaspard's head tilted toward her, grin widening. "Ah, Séverine. You remember, don't you? The cellar. The fire. How you screamed when they tied you up. The Gestapo took your nails, but I take your soul." Séverine hurled the vial of holy water. It burst across his chest. Steam exploded, filling the room with a shriek of metal and pain. The creature staggered back, its outline flickering. For a second, he was gone. Then the walls began to bleed. Thin rivulets ran from every crack and joint, pooling on the floor in dark crimson. The smell of iron filled the air. From behind the bar, Camille retched. Victor wiped his mouth, staring in horror. What in God's name is this? Séverine fell to her knees, clutching her head. He's not bound to one body. He's in the inn itself. The wood, the stone, the fire, all of it. She looked up, eyes wild. You cannot kill a place. As if to answer, the fire in the hearth roared to life, flames curling in unnatural shapes, faces screaming within them, children's voices begging, Maman, est Illinois T. Platt. Gaspard's laughter rose again, this time from every wall, every corner, every grain of wood. Victor grabbed Séverine's arm, pulling her up. What do we do? Her gaze fixed on the floor, where the Ouija board still faintly glowed under the spilled blood. The glass had moved on its own, spelling a single word over and over. Brûle. Burn. She whispered, he wants fire. He was made in it. We must turn it against him. But as she spoke, the flames in the hearth grew higher, reaching the ceiling now, devouring the wallpaper, the old beams. The air became a furnace. Camille screamed as the mirror behind the bar cracked, showing not her reflection but a room of corpses, charred, half-eaten, eyes open in endless shock. Séverine turned to Victor, face illuminated by the inferno. We have to go below, the cellar. That's where he was born. Victor nodded, grabbed her arm. Together they stumbled toward the trapdoor behind the counter. Camille followed, coughing, her hair sticking to her sweat-slick face. As Victor pulled the hatch open, the smell hit them, rot, old wine, and something else. Burned skin. Behind them, the laughter faded. For a moment, it seemed they were safe. Then a whisper came from the darkness of the cellar stairs. You can't bury a butcher, mon ami. Something wet dropped from above, a single drop of blood, still warm, landing squarely on Séverine's forehead. And the cleaver fell again. The trapdoor creaked open with the sound of splintering bone. Below, nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Only the stale air of centuries exhaled upward, damp, heavy with the scent of mildew, rust, and something sweet and rotting, like old fruit soaked in blood. Victor Lemaire held the lantern low, its flame quivering. The light barely reached beyond the first steps, where moss glistened like wet skin. Camille hesitated. It smells like the butcher's shop in summer. Séverine, pale and trembling, made the sign of the cross. No. Worse. This is where the butcher fed. She descended first. Her hand grazed the stone wall, cold as a corpse, sweating with condensation. The steps spiraled down, narrower with every turn, as if the house itself was swallowing them. Victor followed, clutching his revolver, a relic from Algeria. He hadn't fired it in years. It felt useless now, a toy against something that didn't bleed. Camille's breath caught in her throat. What if he's down there? Séverine's voice was faint, almost lost to the dripping echo. He never left. The lantern flickered, the air thinning. The deeper they went, the stronger the smell of wine became, but it wasn't the sweetness of grapes, it was metallic, like oxidized blood. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a vaulted chamber of limestone and rot. Barrels lined the walls, their wood blackened, some split open and leaking dark liquid that shimmered unnaturally. In the center stood a wooden table, ancient, covered in knives, hooks, and butcher's tools crusted with black residue. Around it, faint markings were carved into the floor, a sigil, circular, written in old Provençal script. Victor raised the lantern higher. Christ? Camille gasped. Is that a child's shoe? It was. Small, charred, with something still clinging to the sole. Séverine knelt beside the sigil, tracing the inscription with shaking fingers. The letters seemed to pulse under her touch. It says, La sang garde la porte ouverte. She swallowed. The blood keeps the door open. Victor's hand tightened on the revolver. Door to where? Séverine looked up. Her face was hollow, drained of light. Hell. Or something that smells like it. A faint clinking sound came from behind one of the barrels. Victor swung the lantern toward it, light trembling, catching the edges of chains. Long rusted, nailed into the wall. At their ends hung shackles, each still containing fragments of bone. Camille gagged. Oh mon Dieu, there were so many. Séverine closed her eyes, pressing her palms to her temples. They are here. They never left him. He keeps them, inside the stone. She staggered, her body convulsing as if struck. When she looked up again, her eyes were no longer grey but white, blind, yet seeing something beyond them all. Her voice changed, lower, echoing, as if led with another. He comes. You opened his gate. You fed him with fear. Victor grabbed her shoulders. Séverine. Stop it. She turned toward him slowly, voice not her own. He wants the hunter. He needs flesh to wear. Then her body went rigid. The lantern flickered violently, and for a single second, Victor saw what she saw. A figure bound to the table, Leah, the little girl, her arms pinned by hooks, her mouth sewn shut with wire. And beside her, Gaspard, shirtless, his burnt skin glistening as he carved the air with his cleaver, whispering to the flames that danced like devils around him. The vision vanished. Séverine collapsed, blood running from her nose. Victor dropped beside her. Séverine. Breathe. Camille backed away, trembling. We shouldn't have come down here. He's awake. The barrels behind her began to tremble. One burst open with a hollow pop, spraying dark liquid across her dress. She screamed, not from pain, but from realization. It wasn't wine. It was blood. Thick, coagulated, and hot. More barrels cracked open. The room filled with a low, rhythmic pulse, like a beating heart buried beneath the stone. Victor pointed the lantern upward. The ceiling seemed to move, veins of crimson spreading like mold through the limestone. Then, from the far end of the cellar, came a scraping sound, slow, deliberate, metallic. Séverine stirred, her voice barely audible. He's forging himself again. In the darkness, something dragged along the floor, chains, perhaps, or a heavy tool. The light reached the source, a figure slumped against the wall, head bowed. René. The local hunter, his clothes soaked, his body shaking with small, convulsive jerks. His hands clutched a rusted cleaver. René! Victor shouted. What the hell are you doing here? No answer. René lifted his head. His eyes were pure black, gleaming like wet coal. His mouth twisted into a grin that wasn't his. Bonsoir, Victor, the voice said, but it wasn't René's. It was thick, guttural, burned by smoke. Gaspard's. Camille stumbled back. No, no. René rose to his feet, the cleaver dragging behind him. Every step left a trail of soot and blood. Victor aimed the revolver. Stop right there. The possessed man chuckled. You think a bullet can kill a curse? You should have stayed in your desert, soldier. He lunged. The revolver fired once, the sound deafening in the stone vault. René staggered, but didn't fall. The hole in his chest oozed smoke, not blood. He smiled. See? I'm already ash. The lantern flickered, then went out completely. In the pitch darkness, the sound of footsteps closed in, heavy, wet, deliberate. The cleaver scraped the floor, throwing sparks. Camille screamed. Victor swung the gun wildly, firing again and again. Each shot lit the chamber for a heartbeat, glimpses of horror between flashes. René's face splitting into Gaspard's burned grin. Séverine crawling backward, whispering prayers that turned to screams. The walls oozing blood that climbed upward like roots. Then silence. A breath. Victor felt hot air on his cheek, smelled burned meat. Gaspard's whisper was in his ear. She begged me to stop, you know. The little one. She said she'd pray for me. So I burned her tongue first. Victor swung the lantern in blind rage, smashing it across the possessed man's head. Flame burst outward, catching Renee's coat. The body staggered, then erupted, fire licking across his chest, his eyes blazing with something that wasn't human. "Burn with me," he screamed. The cellar became a furnace. The barrels exploded one by one, spraying fire and blood across the walls. Séverine dragged herself toward Victor, coughing. "The sigil! The floor!" He looked down. The carved circle was glowing, alive with heat. Inside it, something pulsed. Séverine thrust her trembling hand into her coat, pulling a shard of broken glass, a mirror fragment from the inn upstairs. She pressed it into Victor's palm. "Reflect him. Make him see what he's become." Victor understood nothing, only the panic, the fire, the screaming. But he did as told, holding the glass before the burning figure. "Renee!" Or gasped through him, he froze. His expression twisted, horror dawning across the charred mask. "No, that's not me." The fire turned white. The cellar roared with wind and flame. The sigil collapsed inward, dragging the fire, the blood, the very air into itself. Then, is silence. When Victor opened his eyes, he was lying on the cold floor. The air was black with soot. The sigil was gone. The walls steamed. Renee's body was nowhere to be seen. Camille wept softly beside him. Séverine sat motionless, her eyes hollow, her hands burned to the bone from holding the circle closed. Victor reached out, whispering, "Is it over?" Séverine turned to him, voice flat. "No. The gate only closes when the house stops breathing. And this house." She looked upward, where faint footsteps now echoed through the ceiling. "Is still alive." The silence didn't last. It cracked open like an eggshell, first a moan, then a roar, as the floor above began to shake. Plaster rained down. From somewhere distant, a window shattered, followed by a long, dry exhale, as if the building itself had begun to breathe fire. Victor stumbled to his feet, coughing, lungs full of soot. The air was unbreathable, heavy with the scent of iron, pitch, and the sweetness of cooked flesh. Camille clung to his arm, sobbing. "Please," she gasped. "We have to get out." Séverine didn't move. She sat slumped against the wall, her burned hands twitching in the ashes. "He's above us now. The butcher doesn't need bodies anymore. He has his cathedral." Her voice was barely audible over the low groan of the inn. The beams creaked and shifted, dust spiraled from the ceiling in shimmering trails. Victor looked up. "Séverine?" But she was already chanting again, her voice broken but firm, the Latin phrases cutting through the heat. "Die mihi lucem domine, libera numbers a tenebris." Her eyes rolled back, her burned fingers tracing a cross in the soot. A sudden explosion of fire burst from the staircase above, lighting the entire cellar in a pulse of orange light. Camille screamed. "He's burning the way out." Victor dragged her toward the trapdoor, forcing it open. Flames danced at the rim, licking downward, the air alive with the crackle of devouring wood. They climbed. The first step burned through Victor's boot sole. He ignored the pain, pulling Camille after him. Heat pressed down like an animal's body. Smoke rolled through the narrow stairwell in thick, grey sheets. When they emerged into the tavern, the world was red. Tables burned. Bottles exploded. The old beams glowed like molten ribs. Through the haze, they could see shapes moving, silhouettes, jerking, laughing, melting. The patrons. Men and women long dead, now walking again in firelight, their skin waxen and dripping, mouths moving in laughter that had no sound. Camille stumbled backward, shrieking. "They are alive." Séverine climbed out last, her hair smoldering, her eyes like twin coals. "No. They are memories. This is his feast." On the far wall, the mirror had shattered into 100 fragments, each reflecting a different room, 100 versions of the inn, all on fire. In one, Victor saw himself hanging from a beam. In another, Camille kneeling before an altar of bones. In another, Séverine's face split open, light pouring out. And in all of them, behind the reflections, Gaspard stood smiling, his cleaver burning white-hot. A voice rumbled through the room, low and thick, like the earth groaning before a quake. "You can't burn what's already ash." Victor raised his revolver again, though he knew it was useless. "Show yourself, you bastard!" The fire swirled in the center of the room, rising, twisting. The shape that formed within it was neither flesh nor flame, but something between, tall, broad, its features half dissolved in molten heat. Gaspard Le Boucher emerged from the inferno, every step leaving prints that smoldered. His burned lips curled into a grin. "You came to my house. You took my knife. You tried to bury me under prayers." He lifted his cleaver. "Now you'll feed the fire that remembers me." Camille hid behind the bar, sobbing, covering her ears as the laughter filled the inn. Séverine rose, her body trembling. "No. The fire doesn't remember you. It remembers her." She pointed toward the staircase, and for an instant, through the smoke, the ghost of Leah appeared, standing in her white dress, her small hands clasped in front of her, her neck ringed by bruises. Her voice was calm, fragile. "Illinois m'a coupé en morceaux, dans le feu." The butcher froze. The grin fell away. "Non. You're mine." Leah tilted her head, the light behind her growing. "Not anymore." The fire around her began to glow pure white, consuming everything it touched. Séverine turned to Victor. "Now. The mirrors. Break them all." Victor understood. The reflections, they were the gate. Every shard a window that let the spirit multiply. He grabbed the iron poker and swung it at the first mirror. It shattered, scattering molten fragments across the floor. The reflections screamed, 100 voices in agony. Camille crawled to another and smashed it with a bottle. The ghostly silhouettes flickered, burning away. Gaspard roared, the sound shaking the rafters. Flames burst from his back like wings of molten glass. "You can't erase me." Séverine faced him, her body swaying. "You were never a man. Just hunger wearing a man's face." She reached into her coat and pulled the last vial of holy water, the one she had kept for herself, and flung it at his chest. The bottle shattered, hissing like acid. Smoke erupted. Gaspard screamed, a sound that was both human and not, the sound of every scream ever loosed in that cellar. His body flared, cracking like porcelain. Victor swung again, mirror after mirror, until the last one shattered. The fire dimmed. The walls began to crumble. Through the ruin, Leah's ghost walked toward the butcher, her face no longer bruised, her eyes clear. She reached out a hand. "It's time." Gaspard looked at her, and for the first time, the hatred fell away. He knelt, as if before something holy. Then both of them dissolved, a sudden rush of light, white and blinding, washing over everything. The inn screamed as it collapsed. Beams fell. The roof split open, and the night wind poured in, carrying sparks into the dark sky. Victor shielded Camille as they ran for the door, the floor splitting beneath their feet. Behind them, Séverine stood in the middle of the inferno, her eyes fixed on the fire. "Go," she said softly. "Someone has to tell the story." Camille reached for her. "Come with us." Séverine smiled, her face illuminated by the flames. "I already belong to them." The ceiling caved in. Victor dragged Camille out through the main door as the structure gave its final breath. They collapsed onto the cold earth outside, the night wind hitting them like a baptism. Behind them, l'Auberge du Diable Rouge burned, not red, but white, the color of bone. The smoke rose straight into the sky, carrying the faint scent of roses and ashes. Camille sobbed into Victor's chest. "Is she gone?" Victor stared at the burning house, the glow reflected in his eyes. "No one leaves this place, not really." For a long while, they said nothing. The wind sighed through the pines. The fire roared lower, then lower still, until only embers remained, faint, pulsing, like a heartbeat. And then, from deep inside the ruins, a soft sound rose again, a child's laughter, echoing between the stones. Camille looked up sharply. "Did you hear that?" Victor didn't answer. His gaze lingered on the smoke, where for a heartbeat he thought he saw a face, not Gaspard's, but Saint-Véran's, eyes calm, lips whispering something he couldn't hear. Then it was gone. The wind shifted, carrying with it a single word, so faint it might have been the breeze itself. "Merci." Victor closed his eyes. "Repose en paix, madame." He turned away, leading Camille down the dark road that wound through the pines, back toward the village that still slept beneath the stars. Behind them, the last ember flared once, a small, dying heart, before it vanished into the night. Part 3. Provence, Spring 1959. The lavender fields have begun to bloom again, stretching in violet ribbons beneath the pale sky. The wind carries the scent of earth and the ghosts of winter. On the far edge of Saint-Véran, where the hills cast long shadows by dusk, stands a house of pale limestone and broken shutters, the new home of Victor Lemaire. He bought it from a widow who had fled to Nice after her husband vanished in the woods. The walls still smell faintly of old tobacco and vinegar. For months, Victor has tried to fill the silence with the clatter of dishes, the radio humming weakly from the corner, the scraping of his pen across paper. But every sound returns to him distorted, hollow, as though echoing through the cellar of the old inn he burned to the ground. At night, he still dreams of fire. He dreams of the stairs, that terrible, silent staircase. Of Séverine's face, blood streaming from her ears. Of Leah, her white dress turning black with soot, whispering words that taste like ashes. When he wakes, his hands are around his own throat. Camille visits once a week. She no longer works the bar, no longer works at all, truth be told. Her hair has grown longer, darker, her eyes deeper and emptier than before. She wears gloves even when it's warm. "It's the sun," she tells him. "My skin burns easily now." But Victor has seen the marks beneath the lace, faint, circular bruises, like fingers pressed into her flesh. They never speak of the inn. They speak instead of small things, bread, the weather, a new priest in the village. And yet, behind their every word, there is that same silence. A silence that hums like a wound trying to close. One evening, as the Mistral winds began to rise, Victor walked to the edge of his property to mend a broken fence. From there, he could see the valley below, the faint line of the old road leading toward the ruins of l'Auberge du Diable Rouge. The place was gone now, buried under ash and wild grass. And yet, as he looked, he thought he saw a light, just a flicker, moving between the trees. It vanished as soon as he blinked. But the wind carried with it a smell he would never forget. Burnt fat and perfume. That night, he didn't sleep. The wind howled through the shutters like laughter. Camille began to unravel first. She moved into a small apartment above a bakery in Aix-en-Provence, trying to drown herself in noise and crowds. But she could not escape the mirrors. Every mirror showed her the same thing, not her reflection, but a child's handprint, pressed in fog on the glass. Sometimes she heard humming, faint and tuneless, the way Leah used to hum before she appeared. Once, while washing her face, she looked up and saw the mirror breathing, expanding and contracting, as though lungs hid behind the silver. She smashed it with a hairbrush, and blood dripped from the shards. When Victor visited her the following week, the bakery owner said she had left 2 days earlier, leaving her rent unpaid and the windows wide open. The neighbors had complained of a smell, like burnt sugar and iron. In the nights that followed, Victor's isolation deepened. He started writing letters he never sent, to Séverine, to Camille, even to the little girl. Sometimes he signed them, "Forgive me." Sometimes he didn't sign them at all. He stopped drinking. He stopped eating much. But he could not stop the sound. It began as a faint tapping in the walls, once, twice, like wood settling. Then more distinct, tock, tock, tock. Always at the same hour, between midnight and 1. He tore apart the walls looking for rats. Nothing. He stood in the hallway, listening. Then, one night, he realized the tapping wasn't in the walls. It was coming from beneath. He lifted the rug. The floorboards were cool beneath his fingers. When he pressed his ear to the wood, he heard breathing. Days later, Victor went into town. He sought out Father Moreau, the new priest, a young man with eyes that had not yet learned fear. Victor spoke little, but the priest understood more than he said. They agreed to meet at the house that evening. The priest arrived at dusk, carrying a silver crucifix and a small vial of holy water. "Do you believe in ghosts, Father?" Victor asked. "I believe in what sin leaves behind," the priest replied. They walked the house together. The air was thick, as if every breath stirred dust centuries old. When they reached the bedroom, the lamp flickered, once, twice, it then went out. The priest froze. In the corner of the room stood a figure. It was small, pale, and swaying. For a moment Victor thought it was a coat hanging from the peg, until it turned its head. Two white eyes stared back at them, empty as milk. The priest whispered a prayer. The shape dissolved into the dark like breath on glass. When they lit the lamp again, they saw a handprint, small, ash-gray, burned into the wood of the door. Father Moreau left that night and never returned. His letter to Victor came 3 days later. "The child you see is not the child that died. What remains is the echo of her suffering, and the one who caused it still lingers, searching for warmth." On the 7th night, Victor could stand it no longer. He took a lantern and his revolver, and he went outside. The moon hung low and swollen, bleeding through the clouds. The road to the old inn was half swallowed by weeds, but his feet remembered the way. When he reached the ruins, the wind stopped. The silence was so complete he could hear his own pulse. The stones were blackened, the earth hollow beneath his boots. He felt the ground tremble, faintly, rhythmically, like something breathing below. Victor knelt. He brushed aside ash and found, beneath it, a fragment of tile, crimson enamel, the faint shape of a devil's tail. And then he heard it, the creak of a wooden step. The staircase had burned, but the sound was unmistakable. One step, then another, closer. He turned, raising the lantern. There was no one there. Only the dark, and the whisper of a voice small and broken, the voice of a girl. "He's still hungry." The flame in his lantern went out. When dawn came, the villagers saw smoke rising from the valley again. They found the ruins still smoldering, and in the ashes, a single revolver, melted half to slag. No trace of Victor Lemaire was ever found. But those who pass near Saint-Véran at night still speak of the sound. A faint tapping underfoot. And the laughter of a child echoing through the pines. Voiceover, final noir narration. They said the fire cleansed the curse. They lied. Evil doesn't burn. It waits, in the wood, in the air, in the heartbeat of those who survive it. L'auberge du Diable Rouge is gone. But the devil never leaves Provence. Paris, winter, 1963. The city burns with its own kind of cold. Steam rises from the gutters, twisting through the yellow lamplight like lost spirits. Cars slide by in the rain, their headlights carving ghosts across the walls. Somewhere far below, the metro roars like a heartbeat, mechanical, relentless, alive. And above it all, in a crumbling tenement on Rue de la Roquette, lives Camille Valois. The building smells of mildew and stale wine. The wallpaper peels like scabbed skin. She keeps the windows closed even in summer. The streetlight outside flickers all night long, painting her ceiling in a rhythm she's come to recognize, the same rhythm the flames made when they climbed the walls of L'auberge du Diable Rouge. It has been 5 years since that night. She never went back to Provence. She never saw Victor again. But she still dreams of the cellar, the hiss of the fire, the sound of Séverine's voice cracking as she screamed, "Ferme la porte, mon Dieu, ferme la." And the child's whisper behind her, "Don't leave me." By day, Camille works at a cabaret on Rue Saint-Denis, not dancing, not anymore, just serving drinks to men who have forgotten their wives. She moves like smoke, smooth and unreadable, her smile painted on with trembling hands. She drinks when she's not supposed to, laughs when she doesn't feel it, and watches the clock like it's counting her down. There's a man, Julian, a trumpet player with sad eyes and hands that smell of brass. He's kind to her, and that terrifies her. Sometimes he walks her home after her shift. Sometimes he kisses her cheek. Once, he asked, "Why do you always look behind you when we walk?" She didn't answer. Because she couldn't tell him the truth, that she feels a hand hovering inches from her back, the faint brush of cold breath against her neck. She has seen it twice now, in the reflection of puddles, in the chrome of the cafe counter. A shape behind her shoulder, a child-sized shadow, with something dangling from its throat. One night, near closing, the cabaret lost power. The lights cut out mid-song. The crowd muttered, the singer froze, cigarette ember glowing red in the dark. Camille stood by the bar, one hand on a glass, the other on her throat. She felt the air shift, heavy, electric. From the stage came a faint humming, delicate and off-key. It wasn't the singer. It wasn't any of the girls. It was the tune Leah used to hum, the lullaby Séverine once said was from the old nursery upstairs. Camille dropped the glass. It shattered on the floor, splintering the silence. The lights flickered back on, and she saw something in the mirror behind the bar, a little girl's face, pale as wax, eyes like white marbles, watching her through the rows of bottles. When she blinked, it was gone. But the mirror stayed cracked from corner to corner, as though something had pressed against it from the inside. The hauntings grew subtle at first, then cruel. She began waking to find her sheets damp with ash, though there was no fireplace. Matches she never struck appeared burned on the nightstand. The smell of meat cooking filled her tiny apartment, thick and sweet. Her neighbors complained of smoke when there was none. One morning, she found words scrawled in soot on her kitchen wall. Illinois n'est pas fini. He isn't finished. She scrubbed until her fingers bled. But the words returned the next day, only this time, written higher, as though by a child standing on tiptoe. Julian came to visit that week. He found her sitting on the floor in her slip, surrounded by broken plates and empty bottles. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking. He tried to take the bottle from her, but she lashed out. "Don't touch me!" Her voice cracked. Then, quieter, "You don't understand, he's still here. He never left that place." Julian looked around the room, at the burned curtains, the overturned chair, the wall smeared black. "Who?" he asked. She laughed then, a broken, choking laugh. "The butcher," she said. "The one who took her apart. He followed us. He follows the fire." Julian wanted to call a doctor. She begged him not to. That night, he stayed with her until she fell asleep, curled like a child beneath a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke. When he woke before dawn, she was gone. Camille wandered the streets barefoot. The rain had stopped, leaving the stones slick and shining. She walked past cafes just opening, past posters of Brigitte Bardot, past the sleeping drunks and the rising sun. Her feet led her without thinking, toward the river. The Seine shimmered silver beneath the Pont de Sully. Steam rose from its surface like breath. She stood at the railing, staring into the water. For a moment, she thought she saw her reflection smiling back, not her own face, but Leah's, eyes wide and empty, lips parting in a whisper she couldn't hear. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder. Cold. Small. The same hand that had pushed Etienne down the stairs all those years ago. Her scream was swallowed by the wind. 3 nights later, Julian found her again. She had returned to her apartment, but she was not the same. Her hair was wet, her lips cracked, her skin pale as wax. She spoke softly, calmly, as though in a trance. "He's almost done," she said. "He only needs one more flame." That evening, she asked Julian to stay. She poured him wine, lit candles, turned on the gramophone. The needle hissed, a soft, broken melody. For a moment, it felt almost peaceful. Then the candles flared, all at once, their flames stretching taller, bending toward her. Julian stood. "Camille?" She smiled, tears streaming down her face. "Do you smell it?" The air thickened, sweet, choking, the unmistakable scent of burning flesh. The curtains caught first. The fire ran along the fabric like veins igniting. The walls began to groan. Julian tried to reach her, but she stepped backward, into the rising heat, eyes fixed on something behind him. "Leah," she whispered. "It's all right now." The flames swallowed her. He fled the building as smoke poured into the street. By the time the fire brigade arrived, the top floor had collapsed. They found what was left of Camille Valois by the window, one arm outstretched, as though reaching toward the night. Her body was burned beyond recognition, but the mirror above her vanity had survived the blaze, uncracked, untouched, though the glass was fogged with ash. When they wiped it clean, they saw a child's handprint, small and perfect, pressed into the silver. That morning, as the smoke cleared over Rue de la Roquette, the papers called it an unfortunate accident caused by a faulty candle. But Julian knew better. He left Paris a week later, taking only his trumpet and a photo he found in the ashes, Camille at the bar in Provence, smiling faintly, and behind her, blurred by motion, the shape of a man with a butcher's apron and no eyes. Voiceover, noir narration. Paris forgets. It buries its ghosts in smoke and rain. But sometimes, in the rhythm of a jazz song, or the flicker of a candle's breath, the fire wakes again. Camille burned to silence, yet the child still hums her tune. Somewhere, the devil still waits, hungry. Saint-Véran, Provence. Autumn, 1972. The hills are quiet now. The vineyards below lie in ruins, the soil dry and grey. The world has changed. There are highways now, machines that buzz like hornets in the distance, tourists who stop for photographs and never ask what stands beneath their feet. But up on the ridge, in a cottage half swallowed by ivy, Madame Séverine still lives. Or rather, she exists, the way a candle exists when its wick has already turned to smoke. Her hair has gone white. Her eyes, those ash-grey eyes, remain untouched by time, clouded only by what they have seen. Her hands tremble not from age, but from the memory of the dead pressing against her skin each night. The villagers call her La Folle de la Colline, the madwoman of the hill. They bring her bread sometimes, and candles. She thanks them softly, never meeting their eyes. The smell of burning wax fills the cottage, though she rarely lights the candles herself. Because in this house, flames never die on their own. A storm brews over the valley. The sky darkens like a bruise. Séverine sits at her table, the last page of her journal open before her. The ink bottle trembles with each roll of thunder. She begins to write. October 17, 1972. The nights grow longer again. The wind carries their voices. I thought it would end with him, with Victor. But the walls still breathe. I hear the footsteps above me though there is no floor there anymore. The girl still hums her song. I think she is waiting for me to finish. Her handwriting is slow, uneven. The letters drag across the paper like veins. She pauses, listening. The house groans. Then, faintly, a knock. 3 times. Tock. 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 She exhales. You remember, she whispers. Always 3. The wind sighs through the shutters. And for a moment, she hears the giggle of a child, that same thin, fractured sound, the one that used to echo through l'auberge du Diable Rouge before the screams began. On the table beside her lies a photograph, faded, corners burnt. It shows 4 people in front of the inn, Victor, Camille, Etienne, and herself. Behind them, blurred by motion, the faint outline of a 5th figure, tall, in a butcher's apron, head tilted, watching the lens. She keeps it there to remind herself that evil once had a face. But over the years, the ink has bled. Now the figure looks like smoke. She writes again. I burned his name once. I thought that would free her, the child. I poured salt over the ashes and prayed in every language I knew. But some sins are older than prayer. They live in the ground, in the bones, in the air. You can smell them when it rains. Another flash of lightning. It illuminates the room, and for a second, she isn't alone. A girl stands by the window. Her dress white, torn at the hem. Her feet bare, wet with mud. Her head tilts slightly, and the rope mark around her neck glows dark against her skin. Séverine doesn't move. She only whispers, Leah. The child smiles. A soft, ghastly smile. He's here, the girl says. Then she's gone, leaving the window open, rain spilling through like black tears. Séverine rises. Her bones creak like the floorboards. She limps toward the old fireplace, sealed years ago with stones and mortar. It has been silent for 14 years. Until now. The air is hot near it, pulsing faintly, as though the stones themselves breathe. She presses a trembling hand to the wall. The surface burns. And beneath the crackle of thunder, she hears it, the unmistakable chop, chop, chop of a cleaver meeting bone. Then a man's laugh, deep and rasping. Her eyes fill with tears. You can't have me, she says softly. Not again. She returns to her journal. He is back. Not in body, but in the spaces between breaths. He walks when the wind stops. He watches when I close my eyes. I have seen the others in dreams, Victor by the well, Camille in fire, the child in water. They are all waiting for the same thing. An ending. Her pen trembles. If I burn this book, will it follow me? Or will it feed him again? She draws a shaky cross at the bottom of the page. Forgive me, God, for I am tired of mercy. Then she takes the candle, the last one left, and holds it above the paper. The flame hesitates, dancing like a living thing. The wind outside dies completely. In the silence, a voice, not hers, speaks from the dark corner of the room. It's your turn now, Séverine. It's a man's voice, low, guttural, soaked in smoke. The sound she once heard inside the cellar, behind the stones, when she first saw the butcher's ghost. Gaspard. The candle flares, spilling wax across her wrist. Séverine gasps but doesn't drop it. She turns toward the corner. And sees him. He stands there, half shadow, half flame, face melted like candle wax, apron dripping with blood that never cools. But his eyes are not his own. They are René's, black and glistening. He takes a step forward. The floor trembles. Your prayers made me stronger, he says. Every word a door you opened. She raises the candle high. Then I will close it. The room ignites. The neighbors saw the smoke around midnight. By dawn, the cottage had collapsed, reduced to cinders. In the ashes, they found the journal, only one page untouched, miraculously preserved. The ink was still wet. The devil does not burn. He waits. In the wood, in the blood, in the song of the child. And when a stranger knocks 3 times, the inn will open again. Final noir voiceover. They called her mad. They buried her with no name, no prayer, no cross. But the wind still carries her voice, through the pines, across the hills, down into the valley where the inn once stood. And sometimes, when night falls over Provence and the air smells of smoke and lavender, a traveler will see a light among the ruins. And hear the sound of a little girl humming by the old, silent staircase.